kicked him.
Well, that didn't sound like Greenwood to me. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. I had a chance to interview him once when I was working in North Platte, Nebraska. Just a little guy. I mean, the guy can't be much over 4 feet tall. I'm not kidding. He's just a little guy, Lee Greenwood. Well, boy, he can sing. We have with us, I don't know if he can sing, but we have
No.
the Fire Chief Dusty Dienst with us this morning from the city of Faribault. You just said you can't sing?
Not at all.
Not even a note?
Not a note.
Wow, Dusty.
The radio's loud enough. I sound good.
Well, there you go. Yeah, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it.
My
Here
pleasure.
during the busy holidays. I planned, as I was talking to you before going on the air, about doing this earlier, and I'm kind of glad we waited because right now we're talking prime safety time.
Yeah, there's a couple different things going on right now that this makes this is a good time to talk about them.
One, we talked about the other day with the sheriff, ice safety.
Correct. Ice is forming right now, and yeah, it was really cold the other day, but we all know there's snow on top of it, so it's been set back a little bit, and the ice conditions are not good.
Not only that, but a good point was brought yesterday by our meteorologist in the Weather Eye Weather Center during our midday report, Ray Miller. He noted that the water temperatures are warmer too because we had a really warm November.
Yeah, warm November, a lot of groundwater, so you have a lot of water in tiles. That's underground. That's warmer water, and just a lot of water everywhere. So it's moving. And moving water, obviously, even if it's not that warm, is an issue for ice.
Yeah. So if you've got springs, there's some lakes around here that have
Oh yeah.
springs.
Oh yeah. Yep. And what I've been noticing with a lot of the wetlands, so a lot of people don't go on ponds for fishing. There's no fish in there, but if they're out there messing around along shore, there's a lot more snow because it's piled up along there. It's blowing in and caught in the cattails, and water running in from tile lines. So you might have good ice in the middle, but along shore is typically where you have crappy ice. The only good part about that is it's along shore. It's usually not that deep.
Right. One of the reasons why I thought it would be good to bring it up with you is because, well, you would be called out on such a call to try and fish whoever it is out.
Yeah, we take ice rescue pretty seriously. We have a lot of equipment at the fire station. We train. We're all, I'm guessing, I'm the trainer for our ice rescue. I got my book right here. But we're all trained to a pretty high level of ice rescue. We have a lot of equipment we can pull off. With the rivers and the lakes, we have a lot of different opportunities. So we take it pretty serious. We are always ready for that. Thankfully, we don't have to do it a lot. We have done it some, unfortunately, and they've turned out well. But there's always a concern, and this weekend is a concern of mine. I'll be one of the people out there fishing. It's going to be nice. There is some ice, and I stopped and talked with John's Bait and Tackle and Nagel's Tackle yesterday because they're the ones that know. You go to the bait stores, and ice conditions are really variable right now. They're anywhere from some open water along shores up to 8 inches. They both did say most of the ice that is there is good, but it's variable.
Yeah. I know the sheriff said don't put a snowmobile or an ATV or anything like that on it.
They mentioned some ATVs were going out. Probably not what I'm taking out. I'm walking. Andy Nagel did say that there is a house partially through on southeast side of Cedar Lake.
Yep.
So it's a little early. Don't let that cold weather we had over the weekend fool you into thinking we have great ice conditions. We don't right now, and pretty good chance we won't for most of the winter just because this is the starting of it. Unless we lose all of our snow, it's going to be an issue for formation of ice.
Yeah. Not a good winter for ice. In fact, the sheriff noted he speaks with sheriffs up north, and they don't have any good ice up there either.
Yeah, the timing of snow is tough on ice.
What can we do to prevent from going in?
Well, I mean, the only way to not go through the ice is to not go on the ice.
That's
Now,
true.
for some, that's not an option. Some of us like to go out there, so you have to be very cautious. One thing to keep in mind is that ice is never safe. You want to put the odds in your favor by not just going willy-nilly off into the middle of nowhere. Where there's no tracks.
Float coat.
What's that?
You're in a float coat.
Yeah, I've always personally thought if you have to wear a life jacket because you're that worried, you probably shouldn't be on there. But other people have different ways of looking at it. Rarely will I ever go out on a lake and not follow another set of tracks. especially if there's snow. If it's clear and you can see the ice, you take your chisel, your auger, and you drill a trail out to where you're going. Follow somebody else's trail, and even that is not a guarantee. Ice is changing all the time. So just because you're walking on a four-wheeler trail, sure, that four-wheeler stayed on top of the ice while it was there, but that doesn't guarantee that you're not going to go through walking.
That's right. We'll talk more about some holiday safety tips, some wiring. We got all kinds of stuff we want to cover. Monday I was at PA. Last night I was at Tombrona. Tomorrow I'm at Triton. Or tonight I'm at Triton. Tomorrow I'm at
Tomorrow. That's BA and Triton.
We also have a new
Friday I'm at Mayo Civic Center.
TB 1956 R2. This makes an excellent companion to the 2024. And also has a great defensive package with it. To find out how to get Frabrand's 2024s and 1956s on your farm, go to our website at frabrandsfood.com or give me a call at 507-383-3927. Let Frabrand Seed boost your farm income in 2016.
Again, Fire Chief Dusty Dients from the city of Faribault is with us this morning on AM Minnesota. I don't know if we covered all of ice safety. You don't happen to have a little cheat chart with you in your ice safety handbook on, how many inches they recommend when you have a snowmobile or a car or a truck or any of that stuff?
Yep. According to the DNR, anything less than 2 inches, stay off. 4 inches for foot traffic. 5 inches for ATV and snowmobile. 8 to 12 for a small car or truck. 12 to 15 inches for a medium truck. And this year, a lot of years we deal with this, but the first ice that we got apparently is very good. That's what the bait store, it's good, clear, solid ice. From here on out, with the snow on top of it, we're going to get a little more white ice, we call it. It's got snow in it, it's got air in it. So if you have a lot of white ice, you have to double all those thicknesses for what you're doing.
Oh, okay. So then when the sheriff was saying, I don't think I'd have a snowmobile or an ATV on the ice now, even though the DNR says 5 inches, he's taking that into account.
Yeah, and so 5 inches is okay if it's good ice and if it's everywhere. And we know it's not everywhere.
No.
I mean, I've talked to a few fishermen, and it depends on where you drill the hole. So that's the hard part with any ice, is that just because it's 5 inches here doesn't mean it's 5 inches over there.
No, it could just be a few feet, be 2 inches.
Correct. With fish activity, with flows, with springs, it can change. It can change overnight. It's changing all the time. So you just have to be real cautious and use good judgment.
Just taking a wild guess, I'm going to guess that most people who fish these area lakes know these area lakes.
Most do, and if you know of people that do, those are the ones that you like to follow around. Not only because you can catch the fish, but because they've been there. And there's really one thing that I look at that is, it's still not a guarantee, but puts the odds in your favor, is if you're going where other people are. If it's holding them up, it should hold you up too. It's when you are the adventurer and the first one out there that you may learn the hard way that it wasn't good enough to hold you.
Right, and as you suggested earlier, go to the bait shops. They know what's going on.
Yeah, and I was talking with them yesterday again, and they mentioned if I hear of anything, to let them know, because even when I was there, they're taking calls of people, especially this time of the year, that want to come fishing. They're calling them to find out what the ice conditions are like, because people stop to get bait, and they're asking to, and they're telling, and so they're a good source of not only bait but of information for people fishing and for myself.
And of course, you always hear every winter of people being overcome in their fish house.
Yeah, the CO, it's an ongoing thing. All fish houses should have a battery operated CO detector, and just be cognizant of what causes CO. Bad heaters, not being vented correctly. If that's the case, you have to have a detector, and you have to know that, opening up the door or cracking a window, making sure you have some air movement through there, that puts the odds in your favor of not having being overcome by CO.
It seems like every winter we get those stories.
Yeah, and I think if you put the numbers to it, there's a lot of fish houses in the state, so I think the ratio to issues are low.
Right.
But it still happens, and it's tragic because it happens
should
fast.
never happen.
It should never happen. They're a small space, so when it happens fast. You know, your home, you have more square footage, more air for the CO to mix with. It takes longer. It takes more CO to be a problem. But in some of these fish houses, even big fish houses are small compared to a normal living space, and they can fill up with CO real fast.
Just this morning on the news, we had from the Wire and Associated Press a story about a Virgus man who was overcome in his home.
Yep.
His wife came home and found him. Several people had to be hospitalized. They were overcome.
Yep, and it's unfortunate, and it's usually preventable. It's some preventative maintenance to take care of some of those things, but some of them are tragic accidents that just happen.
So I need to have a detector on every level of my home, it said in this story.
Yep, and make sure you keep those where they can wake you up, because putting them in the furnace room is not a good idea. Yep, that might be the source of the CO, but if it's going off and you're 2 levels away sleeping, you're not going to know it. So,
but they do recommend on every level, so that would be including the furnace room, right?
yeah, in the basement. I wouldn't put them in a room. You know, when your furnace is running with cold air returns, the air is mixing, and CO is not heavier or lighter than air. It's just mixed with the air, so it'll be everywhere. It'll vary. The parts per million could vary, of course, closer to the source. There'll be more, but it will get spread throughout the home. And the idea is that you need to be awoken by a detector, otherwise you may not wake up. So putting them where they'll wake you up is very important.
Because we talked about it during fire safety time. I need to replace my smoke detectors. Do you recommend the combo detectors, carbon monoxide and smoke?
I do like them. That's what I have for my CO detectors. They are a good setup. I recommend hardwired, and the combination. What I like about the combination is even your detector in your bedroom is not a CO detector, but it's on the same circuit. So if the hallway detector detects CO, it will set off my smoke detector in my room, even though it's not detecting smoke. So that's probably the top-notch system you can have in normal homes, other than a separate monitored system. That is probably your best protection, is having hardwired system, CO detectors, whether they're combination or standalone, in a part of that circuit is your best protection.
Is it expensive to get those installed, of course, after the fact, not when you're building a house?
It really depends on your home. Right now, new homes, they're code, so there's no, that goes in when they're bare studs. Of course, older 2-story homes, lap and plaster, depends on how the house is built. They can be hard to, or nothing's impossible, but it can be expensive, it can be intrusive, or it can be, you might have to make holes in the sheetrock, the plasters, so there's some of that stuff going on.
What's a life worth, I guess?
Yeah, and you can run conduit on the surface. There's a lot of ways it can be done if it's a priority, and it should be a priority.
Keeping people safe.
Yep.
So that should be on every level of the home.
Yep, a CO detector on every level of the home, and then the smoke detectors right outside of all sleeping areas and in the sleeping area.
We were chatting before sitting down for the show, and I said to you, nobody, when they have the company comes over at Christmas, goes over their fire escape plan, but it may not be a bad idea before you go to bed to say, hey, if there's a fire overnight, here's what we do.
Yeah, and it's kind of a cultural thing that some of you go to grandma and grandpa's and say, hey, what's your fire escape plan?
Yeah,
they're gonna maybe roll your eyes, and I get it a lot, but you don't have to announce it. You just want to be, have your situational awareness of where you are. If you're going somewhere and you're staying at somebody's house, make sure you're not sleeping in an area that doesn't have windows to get out. You need 2 ways out of every sleeping area, and you need to look before it gets dark to how this would happen. And firefighters and first responders' minds sometimes work a little bit different because of what we see and deal with, but you need to know, even when you're in hotels, in shopping centers, in friends' homes, if that goes on, how do I get away from that? Whether it's a fire or something, crazy. What's my other way out of here if that one's blocked? And I know it seems extreme, but we see it. It happens. There's a lot of visiting going on and traveling this time of the year, and you need to know what to do when you're somewhere that you're not familiar with.
How about the woman who broke through up in the cities? Her vehicle went through the ice.
Yep.
And she had a fire extinguisher in the vehicle. She was able to break out the back window to get out of the vehicle.
Very quick thinking, possibly saved her life. And most vehicles have extinguishers. A lot of them wouldn't be that accessible, so maybe good planning, a little luck on her side. Don't know the details, but
Yeah.
it's a great story. Thankfully, it turned out the way it did. But you never know.
Did you say most vehicles have a fire extinguisher?
I think most, probably not most passenger vehicles, but like work vehicles. And there's a lot of them on the road that have fire extinguishers on them. It's an OSHA thing. It's if you're using them for your job, that they have a fire extinguisher in them. So probably not most, like the vehicles we drive every day don't.
Right, a cab of a tractor would.
Yep, cab of a tractor. Any like your construction trucks running around, they have
I
them.
remember my dad, when he had the dairy, his dairy trucks all had extinguishers in them. And I seem to recall him keeping them in a car too when I was young.
Yeah,
well, anyway.
They don't come standard with them,
Right.
But it's a good idea. This is a great story for promotion of having extinguishers in your car. Granted, it wasn't used to put out a fire, but it was used to save a life or two. So never was built for that, but it was very quick thinking on her part.
It most certainly was.
Yeah, it was great. I don't know if you ever tried to break a window in a vehicle, but it's not easy.
It's not easy.
And there's just not a lot of stuff in a vehicle, standard stuff in a vehicle, that you can break a window with. An extinguisher, I would be willing to bet that she had to bang on that thing a couple times before it went, even though extinguishers are pretty strong. Those windshields are an integral part of the support system of your vehicle, and they just don't break.
I think she did the back window. As the front of the car was sinking in, she threw the extinguisher out the back window.
And that's that worked out well. Your front windshield is one of your stronger piece of the glass on your vehicle, so that's probably not your first option to try to break that one.
I would try and kick out the driver's side window or something like that.
Yeah.
But
And if you ever get to that point, I know it's kind of getting off in a little extreme, but always try to hit in the corners.
oh, okay.
We have these little punches where you take like a screwdriver and hit it with a hammer or something. If you do it in the middle, it'll just bounce off. Even hitting it with a hammer will just bounce off. But if you pick a corner, then the whole thing will shatter.
Yeah,
So,
well, good. Thanks for the safety tip
let's
there.
hope they
Hopefully
never
nobody needs it. Yeah, right. Christmas trees and Christmas tree lights. I've got on my notes here. Of course, I was telling you the other day when we were booking the show that about this time, Christmas trees, if you're not watering them, you're not doing them, every day, they're getting pretty dry.
Yeah, we don't know when they get cut. Depends on where they come from. So they're dry. They've been cut for a good week or two before they even show up here, if they're coming from any distance at all. Make sure that when you get them,
another good reason maybe to go to a local place.
Yep. And when you do that, like where I get mine, he's got a chainsaw set up right there, and you make a fresh cut on the bottom of that tree when you're doing your trimming to put it in the stand so it can take up water. And mine was really thirsty. It took up water for the first 3 days. I couldn't hardly keep up with it. So, but you got to watch that, and when it no longer is able to continue to take up water, then that's when you really have to think about the tree having to go. Granted, not before Christmas, but shortly after Christmas, if it's no longer taking water, it's going to get dry.
And didn't you tell me you knew somebody who had never had a live Christmas tree before? They decided to do it for the first time. They didn't know about the cutting the base of the tree.
Yeah, they just brought it home, put it in the stand, watered it. It'll still take up some water, but a fresh cut, just like flowers, any of that will help it draw up moisture, give it a fresh cut. You don't have to take off inches. You just take off a little bit to open up that cambium layer where the water will go up into the tree.
So another tip would be the Christmas lights, and I think most of us, I haven't put out lights in probably 20 years, but when I used to do it, I'd always check the lights before I put them out,
Yeah, when you're stringing them, it's a good idea to make sure you can't see any copper. The insulation needs to be intact. It's less of a fire hazard than it is a shock hazard to somebody. You had mentioned wrapping them around metal railings or around metal. Of course, if you have electricity going to metal that's not grounded, it's not going to trip a breaker. So when somebody comes along and touches that, they're going to get a little tickle or more, a shock. So just kind of look at it when you're putting them up. Make sure if you see any damaged cords with the price of them now, it's not worth fixing them. Just throw them away, get some new ones. LEDs are great. They don't draw what they used to draw. They're not as hot as what the old incandescents are. So they're a great safety factor, and they don't consume the energy. So they're better on the bill. So they're a good idea to switch over to LED.
So just check to make sure there are no frayed wires.
Correct. Yep, make sure they're not showing, if they show any type of wear at all, and we abuse them a little bit, we wad them up and throw them in a box for the year, or they're outside, and the sun breaks them down over time. They're not going to last forever. They just need to be replaced as they show wear.
Dusty Dients is Faribault's fire chief. We're going over some holiday safety tips here throughout the holidays. Of course, the number one cause of fires is cooking, right?
Correct.
And there'll be a lot of cooking over the holidays.
A lot of cooking, a lot of stuff going on, and when it comes to cooking fires, most of the cause that they get out of control is inattention. You're not watching them, so you're going to have people over, a lot of excitement, things going on. So you got a lot of things going on at once. You still have to prioritize that open flame or that hot stuff on the stove over all the other stuff around you. You have to be attentive to what's going on, especially when it comes to cooking.
And it doesn't hurt to repeat some things that we talk about during fire safety, like having that extinguisher not in the kitchen.
Yes, very good. Hey.
No, I heard you well.
Yep, don't put it in the kitchen. I just heard something the other day so I don't know if I was watching a show or it was on the news about having a fire extinguisher in the kitchen, and I thought, oh, brother, that's not a good spot for it. Put it by an exit so you can head out and then know that you can get out safely, and then maybe if you feel like you can try to knock that fire down a little bit, you could go back in, but you have the door behind you that way.
Yeah, and that way, you have to make the determination whether or not, if it's gone too far, don't even try it, right?
Right, don't even try it. And call 911, even if you get the thing out. We have some nice fans, we can come help get the smoke out of there, get you back on track to where you were before, help you clean up a little bit. But the big thing is getting the smoke out of the house, with not wanting to open the windows, all the windows up, or not having the right wind, we can put a fan and we can get smoke out of the house pretty quickly so you can get back to your whatever you were doing before.
I don't remember if I asked you this before. I always had this little mini extinguisher for my kitchen.
Yeah.
Should I get a regular sized extinguisher?
It really is based on how big a fire you think. A small one is only good for so long and for a smaller fire. So there are recommendations on the sizes, and I don't have that with me, but
okay.
You just know the limitations that you have. If you have a pretty good sized fire, like out of a garbage can, that little extinguisher may not put it out. It'll slow it down. It'll knock it down pretty good. A bigger one, there's so many variables. Once you have smoke in a room and you light off an extinguisher besides and all that powder is around, you're going to be limited on how long you can be there anyway. Between the smoke and the powder driving you out of there, you're not going to just be able to stand there and put out the fire, like they show on Hollywood, where there's really no smoke with that fire. It's going to be a challenge to just stand there until it's out.
Right. So it sounds to me like the small ones don't do a whole lot.
They're limited. Yep. But again, you have a big one, but you can't use the whole thing because the smoke or the powder drives you out of there. So there's a balance there. I don't know. There's not one perfect answer for what size do I have. One good thing to look at though is, depending on your ability, is the little ones are good for those that maybe can't carry a heavy one. It's better than nothing. So some of these old silver ones, I think I get after you a lot on this, but the silver ones with the water in them, like when you went to school, those are heavy. Not everybody could just take those and put out that fire. So make sure you don't have one that you can't handle.
Dusty Dients is Faribault's fire chief. I have ladders written down here because we had an employee's wife fall from a ladder here recently, and one of those attic ladders, which made me think maybe we should touch on ladder safety too, especially, having gone on a ladder in the winters. This was inside, of course, the attic, but not a wise thing.
Sure. OSHA has a lot of info and a lot of problems with improper ladder use. We don't always use them the way that they were meant to be used, and that's usually where problems come in. Some people are better on ladders than others. They have more balance. The more you're on them, the more comfortable you are. So you have to be really careful. It's always good to have another person around that can stand back and either hold the ladder or can see that you're maybe a little wobbly, not comfortable with what you're doing.
I was chuckling because I always call my neighbor Gil Truax and ask him to come over and watch me when I go up the ladder.
Well, you know, and even if it's just to call 911 because you fell
Right,
down, you
that's
know,
what I told him.
there is that. I mean, it's good planning, but you know, it kind of goes back a little bit to ice. If you're that uncomfortable, if you're thinking down the lines that I better have somebody over here because I'm probably going to fall and need someone to come, then you probably better rethink what you're doing. But make sure your ladders are in good shape. Obviously, aluminum ladders should not be used anytime you're doing anything electrical at all, because that.
Boy, did I learn that lesson the hard way.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I was. I don't know if I should admit to this. I was cutting a branch off a tree, you know, with a electric chainsaw, and as I broke through the branch, the electric chainsaw hit the cord.
Oh.
And yours truly got a nice little shock there on my aluminum ladder. Not because of that, but because.
well, you know, it's not funny to those that have went through this, but it's not always, you know, in that case, it wasn't the shock, but it would have been, had you fallen, it would have been the sudden stop at the bottom of the fall when that throws you. That is really bad for you. So, being on a ladder and wobbling around, you know, is a problem. But if you fall off that ladder, and we look at it in our world as anything over 10 feet, 6 to 10 foot is a life-threatening injury if you fall, you know, 6 feet off a ladder. Depends on how you land.
Right after that, Dusty, I went out and got a gas chainsaw.
Good. And how about you still using that aluminum ladder?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have electricity on it, so then you're okay.
Yeah. Well, I've been thinking about replacing that too because it's not real tall and it's kind of wobbly.
Yeah, they don't last forever. Fiberglass and you know, wood ladders tend to get a little wobbly because they are made out of wood, and that changes. Fiberglass ladders are probably your best bet.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Need to get me a good fiberglass ladder. And I was asking before you hit the airwaves. My home was built in '53, so my attic door may not be fireproof.
Yeah, it's a good idea to have them. You know, when they build them now, it's just a sheetrock lid on them.
Right.
And you know, technically, even once those are open one time, they're not, you know, too cold because they're no longer sealed. Granted, it's a pretty small little space around there, but the idea is if you have a fire below or above, is keeping everything compartmentalized. So the more openings you have in things, it allows fire to travel further and get more air and spread quicker. So you'll even see these pull-down ladders in garages that if they're not the fireproof ones, or you know, they should probably are an issue. In garages, you're okay with that. In a home, if they're only wood and there's a fire, it's going to get into your attic quicker because it's going to burn through that. So
definitely
having sheetrock on the lid is good.
We've run out of time. Thanks, Dusty.
Well, thank you.
You're in tune to KDHLAM, Faribault, Minnesota.